What was your worst experience at a doctor's office? Story 1. I thought I had a broken nose. The doc was showing me, on a heavy glass X-ray plate, that my nose was not broken. But as I was looking up, he dropped the plate on my nose and broke it. Reply. Guess you're here for a broken nose after all. Huh. Doctor probably. Story 2. Friday morning. Me. My stomach is really hurting. I can't stand up straight, it hurts so bad. I feel like I'm going to puke and/or shit my pants and the pants of everyone in a 4-yard radius. 4 hours later. Doctor, here's a prescription for ibuprofen, take some Pepto. Peace out. Sunday morning. Me. My stomach is still hurting really bad. I haven't slept at all since Thursday. I haven't eaten at all. Yet I still feel like I'm going to be spraying from both ends. 2 hours later. Doctor, cool, let's get an scan done. An hour later. Doctor. Yeah. Looks like your appendix is about to burst. You will need surgery immediately. 2 hours later. Doctor, the surgeon will be coming in a few hours. 3 hours later. Doctor. Yeah. The surgeon will be coming in tomorrow afternoon. 1 hour later. Me. I just left this other hospital because my appendix is about to burst and they can't help until tomorrow. 45 minutes later. Better drive. Okay. We got your scan results, let's cut you open. 2 hours, 1 surgery and $84,000 later. Nurse. Your insurance will cover most of this, but for some reason even though our hospital is covered, your anesthesiologist isn't, so another $3,000 will need to come out of pocket. 6 months, dozens of phone calls, hours and hours on hold, and calling one insurance agent a cunt later. Insurance. Turns out you were covered, we just filed the claim wrong. Reply. IOW, we knew you were covered, but I'm trying to make our numbers look better, because one of my KPIs is mitigating payouts, and most people will just give up and pay. Story 3. Was 17, had an infected ingrown toenail. My pediatrician tried cutting and digging it out with what looked like pliers and bracing his leg against the table. After fucking around for a bit, he realized he wasn't going to get it. No numbing gel or anything. Hurt like a mofo. Scheduled an appointment with a podiatrist, he numbed it, had it removed in about 2 minutes and told me to never see that doctor again. Reply. Reading this while having a potentially infected ingrown toenail is making me rethink my life choices. Story 4. I have 2. I was taken back to an examination room and got really thirsty while waiting for the dermatologist. I went to the front to ask for water. On my way back, I walked into the wrong room and saw the doctor and another patient. He was holding the guy's dick. I said, I am so sorry, and the guy mumbled, it's okay, as I raced off. I still feel awful. I mentioned, to my BF, that I didn't realize dermatologists inspect dicks, and he was like, contrary to popular belief, scientists have found that dicks are in fact covered in skin. According to my mom, some friend of a friend went to the gyno and gave a urine sample only to find there was no TP, so she pulled a tissue out of her purse and used that instead. When she got on the table for her checkup, the doctor peeled a US priority stamp from her labia and gave her a curious look. It had come from her purse. Reply. I am entirely too amused by the priority, pussy. Reply 2. A tramp stamp, if you will. Story 5. If an emergency room counts. Walked in with chest pains and severe pain area around left shoulder blade. Here, fill this out. Wait over here. Walk back here. Go back to waiting room. Walk back here again. Doctor walks up, first time I saw him, hands me discharge papers. Follow up with your doctor in a few days. Wife drove me 40 miles to another hospital. They freak. Rush me to the cath lab. In the nick of time. Had 100% blockage of coronary lad. Also known as the widowmaker heart attack. Reply. I woke up with chest pains and left shoulder pain. Took some crushed up aspirin and woke wife to take me to hospital. At hospital Doc did an EKG and told me it definitely wasn't my heart. Then blood work was done, and it was definitely my heart. Gave me nitro tabs under my tongue. I was rushed into cath lab for a stent. Over the next week had 4 more stents. Story 6. At a hospital. A little context. I am white. My wife is African American. We were checking in for the birth of our child. It was after normal business hours, so we were checking in through the emergency room. A woman, white, was there in front of us. She had a bad accident and cut off a toe. Me and my wife were waiting patiently next to each other because the woman was definitely the priority. They check her in and we walk up to check in. They ask my wife some questions and take her back for vitals before we are to go to maternity. A few minutes later, a nurse indicates that they are done and I can join my wife. I start to walk to her when a security guard, late 50s white male, stops me and yells at me. He puts his hand on his firearm. He then insists I join my wife. I step forward towards my wife and he grabs the handle again and orders me into a room. I step into it where I see the woman with her toe cut off. He steps in and continues to yell at me and the woman for not listening to him. He berated her for having an idiot for a husband. It took another security guard and a nurse to stop his shouting and tell him my wife was the African American woman. He didn't finish his shift before he was terminated, but it didn't make the experience any less bad. Reply. Wow, that's pretty fucked up. Dude shouldn't have had a gun in the first place. Story 7. I went to a clinic to see a doctor about a fever and body aches and informed him I was allergic to NSAIDs. He said he'd give me something and it was not an NSAID. Went home, swallowed the pill, immediate allergic reaction starts. Rushed to the A&E of a hospital where they pumped me full of drugs to stop the allergic reaction. And the doc there asked me why I took the NSAID. I think the A&E doc reported the clinic doctor because he was never seen again. Reply. I had a similar thing at a hospital here. Told multiple nurses and staff that I was allergic to aspirin, basically everyone except the doctor. Doctor prescribed me Advil, and assuming he looked at my chart and having no idea that both are NSAIDs, took Advil. Came back to the hospital an hour later in anaphylaxis and difficulty breathing. 25 years later, had a minor surgery at the same hospital and now they put a bright band around my wrist immediately, and the first thing any person I interacted with asked is, "Do you have any allergies?" Annoying to be asked that 25 times in a 4-hour period, but nice to see that policy has changed to make sure that kind of thing doesn't happen again. Story 8. Laid on my side with my back to the door for a prostate exam. Heard people walk by talking while a finger was in my butt and realized the door was open. Reply. I want to move to another country on your behalf just from reading this. Story 9. The ENT doctor removed a skin cancer from my nose, leaving an ugly scar. Turns out he excised the wrong area and I went to a different doctor to actually remove the cancer. Story 10. I was getting a bone density scan for some odd reason, and the doc came in a while later and told me I had osteoporosis. This was not why I was there in the first place and was completely surprised. I asked him if I could see the chart, and it was for a 70-year-old woman. I was a 30-something man, and he had the wrong chart. Turns out I did not have any issues at all. Well, bone density related. Reply. Oh God. This reminded me of the time I took iron pills daily for 4 months because LabCorp mixed my results with someone who had severe anemia. When I went back to be tested again, my iron levels were so high it was almost bad. Story 11. My family practitioner referred me to the therapist connected to their office. Before our session, I made sure to ask about patient confidentiality. The therapist assured me that it was all private, locked behind a different level of access, so only she would be able to see this part of my records. I was struggling a lot with my mental health at the time and really needed the help, so I was brutally honest about what I was going through during the session. At my next appointment with my FP, the nurse doing my pre-assessment started going down the list of all the very private things I had told the therapist, asking me for updates for the record. There was no extra layer of privacy. The therapist had simply entered it into my patient notes that the entire office staff could see. I ended up walking out. Never went back to that office. Story 12. When I got the news I had stage 4 cancer after being told by a doctor that I was too young for cancer. I'm 29. Reply. My primary care is an office of rotating residents. I went in one time for a suspicious raised area on my back. Before doing the skin biopsy, the resident told me I was too young to be worrying about cancer. Had to break the poor guy's heart and tell him I couldn't lay on my stomach for the biopsy because I had a mastectomy a few months ago and can't lay on the tissue expanders. Story 13. I was in my early 20s and very naive. I began having gynecology problems and started seeing a gynecologist at the county hospital. I knew his exams were weird and I hated them because he would be doing things that didn't seem necessary. One day I was in the exam room waiting to see him when I heard the lady in the next room yelling at him to stop rubbing my clit, you fucking pervert. This was back in 1984. Doctors examined you without a nurse in the room. I ran out and never went back. Reply. My town had a lady doc who just had to inspect every guy's penis, whatever they came in for. Reply 2. Doctor, I dislocated my arm, please help. Okay, but first, we gotta make sure your dick is okay. Story 14. It took me 13 years to find out my gallbladder was dead. I went to my doctor repeatedly, then another, then another. 7 different doctors. I had excruciating pain that never moved, always flared when I ate. It would last for hours. If I felt the pain coming on, it would stick around for about 6 to 9 hours before it abated. Solid 10 on the pain scale. If I ate anything other than toast the next day, it would come back. Impossible to sit, stand, move, lie down, exist. Went to the a few times. They'd give me ultrasound after ultrasound, and because they saw no gallstones they always wrote it off. You're probably constipated. You're just overweight. After begging for a referral to another specialist, they gave me a full-body MRI and several hours of testing to watch the minute-by-minute function of my organs. Turns out my gallbladder had 93% non-function. Just a mostly dead organ. They had me scheduled for surgery the next week. I had it out and it was life-changing. It was only after having it out that I realized how fucking common the surgery is, and how any doctor who'd given me even vague consideration might have realized a gallbladder can malfunction without stones. I did not know how to advocate for myself because I kept being dismissed. I wish I'd been more assertive because I suffered a lot. Story 15. When I wanted a hysterectomy because my life was literally in danger due to anemia and non-stop bleeding and was told no, because my husband might want kids. I am not nor have I ever been married. I was in my 40s and I didn't want kids in the first place, but after explaining all this, was still told no. Because I might meet a man and he might want to knock me up at over 40, and I did not get a say, apparently. I went to Mexico and they yoinked that thing out for me. I came back and met with a completely different doctor for follow-up, and when he learned I'd had a hysterectomy without my future husband's consent, he told me you wouldn't treat me and to see PP for any future care because they're used to dealing with whores. This was 6 years ago, if you're wondering. 2017. I have no reason to think anything has changed and quite a few reasons to think it's getting worse. Story 16. Months after a breast lump removal, my breast was still numb. I had the surgeon recheck it for the reason why. He said he didn't cut any nerves, flicked my nipple and said, "You're fine." Story 17. I had a brown recluse bite under my nose, and it began to open up. I went to the urgent care. The doctor told me to lay down and prepare myself. Now, I work in healthcare, so I already knew this wouldn't feel good because he told me he was going to scrape out what was going on, pack it and send me on my way. He comes in, doesn't give me any warning and shoves a needle in my face with lidocaine, doesn't wait for it to localize, and began to scrape out the wound. I gave birth naturally and would rather do that again than have to go through that horror ever again. I was in shock, just uncontrollably shaking after from the pain. Story 18. Not me, but a close friend. She was having debilitating migraines, to the point she couldn't work or function. She waited nearly a month to see a neurologist. Upon a brief examination, he said, "You don't have anything wrong with you. Just exercise and try not having headaches." 3 months later, he finally relented and did an MRI. She had massive lesions on her brain. She was diagnosed with MS. The smug bastard was somehow irritated she had a positive diagnosis. Her health wasn't as important as his ego. Hey, stop. Stay safe out there. Subscribe for more. Yo.